Hey, welcome back and good morning to all of the options traders out there. And you've heard me talk so many times before about the value of public information, or maybe I should say the lack of value. But I still hear a lot of traders talking about this and as if they have some type of benefit. They'll say, well, I read a news story on CNBC's website, or I saw it on CNBC, or so and so thinks the stock is going up or down, or this economist says this is going to happen. And what these traders fail to understand is that once that information is out, everybody knows it, and therefore the value of it is questionable at best. It's certainly not going to give you an edge once everybody knows about it. And despite trying to push this message out so many times, people still feel like they have an edge just because they read about something. And I thought what might be a fun way to understand this concept about the value pretty much going to zero once it becomes public is to take a look at the game show Wheel of Fortune. So what does that have to do with it? Well, let's take a look at the Wheel of Fortune and the value of public information. And as always, before we do, please be sure to click like and subscribe. It goes a long way into promoting the channel and is always greatly appreciated. So let's start with a basic source of information, probably the most widely used sources for traders, and that is their charts. Let's say that you're looking at candlesticks or perhaps moving average patterns. Or maybe you're looking at Bollinger Bands and you're seeing that the stock price is heading near the upper Bollinger Band. Or maybe you're looking at Ichimoku clouds and you see that the cloud is turning from red to green or from green to red. And traders just think that they have an edge because they can see these different patterns. And what they fail to realize is that all of this information is part of the stock market information. Everybody knows it. So remember that traders are constantly talking about their advantages because they see certain patterns forming or because they read it on CNBC. And again, what they fail to realize is that everybody else knows that information too. It's not just this little group of traders in one room. We've got traders in New York. We have traders in Philly. There's traders everywhere. And the thing is, every single one sees this stuff. You're not the only one. Remember, it's widely taught. Everybody knows about a bearish engulfing candle. And because of that, the information doesn't give you an edge if everyone else has that same apparent edge. So remember that you can't beat the averages by doing what the average person is doing. And yet that's kind of the philosophy that you're using if you're looking at your charts and saying, oh, now I have an edge. Now again, traders often find this hard to believe. But let's take a look at an interesting example with Wheel of Fortune. So everybody knows the game show Wheel of Fortune, no need to describe that, but it actually began back in January of 1975. And as everybody knows, players get to choose 5 letters plus a vowel. And then they turn those letters that you've chosen in this vowel, if they exist on this puzzle, and from the letters that you've chosen, you have to try to figure out the entire puzzle. Well, what would be a good strategy for this game? Well, with the advent of computers, you could go through and say, well, what are the most common letters in the alphabet? What are the most common vowels? Let's choose those. And that's exactly what players did. And eventually, every single contestant learned to choose RSTLNE. And it kind of took away from the show. Everybody knew those were going to be the 6 letters that were chosen. Well, because of that, and because it was starting to dilute the interest in the show, in October of '88, the show ended up giving those letters to contestants. And once those letters were put up, again, courtesy of the show, contestants chose 3 more consonants plus another vowel. So what does that tell you? It tells you that RSTLNE had no value because everybody knew about it. Now you might think, well, wait a minute, if those are still the most popular letters, and I get to choose 3 more consonants plus another vowel, it made things easier. Well, that would be wrong too. And that's because the creators of these puzzles learn as well. The puzzle creators won't select puzzles where R, S, T, L, N, and E are going to do a lot of good. They recognize that. So once the market, let's call it the potential contestants as well as the creators, once the market learned about R, S, T, L, N, E, they had no value. And so the game show just shifted to a new set of randomness. In other words, the benefit of R, S, T, L, N, and E had now been factored in. They had no benefit. And I think this is a really good way to show that. The show learned that everybody knew it and it now had no value. And the same is true with strategies. And so you'll still hear people talking about things like selling naked puts. And they'll say, oh, because the odds are in your favor and you're going to make all of this money. Well, it's nonsense. Everybody knows the pros and cons of selling naked puts. It gets factored in. If the sellers always made money, nobody's going to be the buyer. And that means that sellers have to lower their prices until somebody finds it enticing enough to be the buyer. Well, if it's enticing enough to be the buyer, it can't have a huge edge for the seller. Or maybe they'll say, well, if you don't want to take the risk of the naked options, let's say, what about credit spreads? Or what about a broken wing butterfly just because it sounds fancy? And they all think that they have an advantage because they see the candlesticks forming or the Bollinger Bands or the news and they think they've got an edge. But again, remember that you can't beat the market using information that everybody knows. And if you still don't believe it, ask, would you be confident as a contestant on Wheel of Fortune because you just discovered that R, S, T, L, N, and E are the most popular letters in the English alphabet? Well, remember, everybody else knows that. And you're going to be surprised when you get to the show and find out that they just hand them to you. And that's exactly what happens in the market. So the big point from this presentation is be careful. Don't put too much faith into indicators or patterns. I'm not saying that they have zero value. I'm just saying it shouldn't be your only source of value. To have any validity at all, they must be established patterns, such as, again, bullish engulfing, bearish engulfing patterns, moving averages, stochastics, all of the things that we know. Well, therefore, if they're widely known and if they're established, then they must have little value because everyone knows and price has reflected the value. And if you're still in doubt, ask why Wheel of Fortune started handing out RSTLNE for free. And for anyone who'd like to learn more about the art and science of options trading, please check out the Alpha Trader course, Strategy Lab, and a Candlesticks and Technical Analysis course. It's all at optionsatoz.com. Also, please join us on Options A to Z's Facebook trading group, and you can find a link in the description below.